our agenda are board announcements, and I'd just like to say congratulations to those who won their elections on November 3rd and are still with us. We're listening forward, people slide. So, any other board announcements? I see. Public open time for matters that are not on our agenda for anyone who would like to speak. Okay, seeing none. Dawn, report from Chief Executive Officer.
Great, thank you. So the first item I have tonight is I wanted to offer sincere thanks to Director Lyon, who is having his last meeting here with us tonight. So Director Lyon, we wanted to thank you for your years of service, well, over a year of service, and wish you well in your future endeavors. You're definitely going to be missed, and we'd like to adopt a resolution in your honor at our next board meeting. But we just wanted to recognize you and thank you for your...
I just want to mention I didn't lose the election. I didn't run.
Very important. And then the next item, I wanted to just turn over the mic to Shalini Swarup, who is with our regulatory, legal, and legislative team.
Yeah.
And she's going to give you all a little bit of background on the PCIA information that went out to you last week.
Yeah, so all of you should have received my email on Friday about the proposed decision in PG&E's 2016 ERA proceeding. You might remember that this was when PG&E proposed to increase the PCIA fees to our customers by about 72%. Well, those numbers were a little bit out of date. Now the proposed increase is about 95%. And it actually is likely to increase soon because the calculations aren't quite complete. So we are now looking at about 100% increase in the PCIA for our customers in 2016, and that does include care customers. So that's the first issue. The second issue is that PG&E tried to, quote, retire an account that has about $1 billion in it from overpayment of the PCIA. And we might remember, have asked that some of that money is put towards our customers. The Commission denied our request to put that money towards our customers, but is also proposing to deny PG&E's request, and it has indicated PG&E should go back to the drawing board and figure out a different proposal of what to do with that money in next year's ERA proceeding. So that's what the proposed decision says about the $1 billion account. The proposed decision about the increase, the proposed decision says the math checks out, it's good to go, we'll have this 100% increase on our customers. So that is why I sent you those resolutions and letters last week. I know I've been in touch with a number of your city councils and staff members, so thank you. And we hope to have some action or input from your constituencies and your local government agencies as well, and hopefully some of our our organizational partners like Main Street Moms, the Marin Conservation League. They're also very concerned about this increase. If any of you have any questions about that you want to direct to me one-on-one with your city council staff, I'm very happy to do so. Does anyone have any questions now? Yes?
I just want to know what the timing of the proceeding is, because we'll be taking it up on December 2nd.
Yes, thank you so much. I forgot to mention that. So the comments on the proposed decision are due on December 3rd, and the Commission should be voting on this item on December 17th. And so if you cannot get your letters and resolutions in by then, please do so anyways, because we still have the customer vintaging issue in 2016 that we're expecting. And the way I wrote that resolution was to affect both issues. So if you can get that passed, we can only, call this a one and done type thing. I don't want to keep coming back to you, your city councils.
Just a follow-up, so one option that we can do, so we're going to take it up on the 2nd, which I don't think it'll be a problem. I can sign it on the 3rd. You can send it into the CPUC public advisor by email. So that's what I did with a letter we sent recently to the CPUC. So maybe that's one way if people are time challenged to get it in by the 3rd.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you. And also, please, when you send it to the public advisor office, just also send a copy to me so we know what's floating out there. So when a commissioner asks us about it, we know what to talk about. So, yes, Director Bailey.
Would you mind forwarding the proposed decision, at least to me?
Sure.
Thank you.
It's scintillating reading.
How long is it?
20 pages.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
All right, thank you.
Thanks, Shalini.
The next item I have is I wanted to let folks know that since our last board meeting, we've had 2 communities go through the process in Napa of completing their membership request. And they've approved their resolutions and ordinances. And these include the City of Calistoga and the City of American Canyon. The City of St. Helena is scheduled to vote at their council on Tuesday, November 24th. So that's coming up pretty soon. And the ordinance is on the agenda as well as the resolution. So wanted folks to know that. I was actually up in Napa this morning for an event, and the City of Napa is very concerned about getting beat by the other councils. So I think they are likely to be moving quickly as well, and we may be able to accelerate the process in Napa. So I know Director Wagon Connect is going to be a little bit late to this meeting, but we'll be coming about halfway through, and just wanted to thank him for all his efforts in reaching out to his local electeds there.
It's great. There's a race to see who can sign up first.
Yes, the local competition is always a good thing. Next item, and we have some images up here on the screen which are going to give you a little visual to go with this quick update. EDF Renewable Energy has broken ground on the Buck Institute. So this is really exciting. And for those of you that may not remember, the very first renewable energy contract that we entered into for direct supply was with EDF. And because we really wanted to get some local product into that contract, we required that they build a 1 megawatt solar project of some sort of solar shade structure was included as an option, and they have been planning that at the Buck Institute now for many years, and we're really excited that they have finally broken ground on it. The other good news about this project is that they have hired Cupertino Electric to do a lot of the key work. They are an IBEW firm, union firm, and there are workers already on site now in the early stages of development. So we're really excited about that, and I think we'll be doing a ribbon cutting before too long. Just a few more stats on that. There are currently 6 construction staff on site. The unions working on the project include IBEW, operating engineers. They have 2 operators, and then also the laborers union is included. The peak number of workers at this site is going to be 25 construction staff on site, and we'll be taking some more photos as the development progresses, and I'll let you know once it's finished. I'm sure we'll be having a ceremony.
So Don, let me ask you, the site is on a single level here. This is the upper parking lot of the Buck Institute, because there are lower parking lots as well, but the solar installation is going in on this one upper parking lot.
That's correct. The upper parking lot is dirt and gravel, and so the plan is to do the bulk of the project at that location, and then there's also going to be a little bit. Well, actually, Greg, you can speak to this better. Do you want to add to that?
Yeah, the planning folks decided they needed to have carport structures for the handicap spaces on the lower levels as well. So those will be constructed as part of the project, but they will not have solar on them.
All right.
Is this part of our feed-in tariff program?
No, this is separate and apart from the feed-in tariff. So it's one of a few different strategies that we have to get local projects built. And the concept here was, in the very first bidding process, we got a lot of bids for renewable energy, and most, if all of them actually, were from outside of our service territory. Many of them were from the Central Valley, and that's where we were seeing the best prices. But we really wanted a good price for our project. We also wanted something local, and so the solution that we kind of came up with jointly was that we would agree to buy a big chunk of power from the Central Valley and require that they also develop 1 megawatt here. And at that time, there wasn't a project of that size. A 1 megawatt project had never been built in Marin County. At this time, of course, there has been through our feed-in tariff. There's one already. But this will be about the same size as the San Rafael Airport project, which is 1 megawatt. And it won't take up part of the quantities in our feed-in tariff. It's separate and apart from that, and we'll be paying the same price for that power supply that we're paying for the Central Valley supply from the same developer. Any other questions about that project? Okay, great. So the next item is, I wanted to let folks know that we are now underway with our strategic planning process. And you will get an email shortly, probably from Darlene, about the strategic planning and inviting you to participate in a survey, a written survey. Or if you're very interested in doing an in-person interview, we can also arrange for that. We have to avoid quorum issues, so we're not going to be doing that for everybody. But for folks that are interested, please let me or Darlene know, and we'll make sure that you're included. And if you're not doing a one-on-one interview or a small group interview, we'd love for you to at least do the written survey. It won't take too long. So, it'll really help us in the strategic planning process. The next item, sorry, there's a few tonight. I've got 3 more. I just wanted to remind folks that Director Butt and I are going to be participating in the UN Climate Summit coming up in Paris in about a week now, a little over a week. And just for background, in case any of you get questions about it, the international response to climate change really began through this venue at the Rio Earth Summit in 1992, where the Rio Convention included the adoption of the UN Framework on Climate Change, which resulted in a really terrible acronym, UNFCCC. So that's what they are calling this conference. It stands for United Nations Framework on Climate Change. This convention set out a framework for action aimed at stabilizing CO2 levels to avoid interference with climate systems. And the objective of this conference of parties, or COP, is to review the convention's implementation, kind of gauge where we are and making sure that there are rules in place in the countries that are involved to ensure, to the extent possible, legally binding universal agreements on climate. The aim is to keep global warming below 2 degrees Celsius. MCE has been invited to present at 3 events at this conference, and we'll be hosting an information table with 2 other nonprofit organizations. One of the MCE's presentations will take place with a representative from the governor's office. We're working on planning that now. We met with this representative yesterday. So I think it will be effective as far as talking about community choice, which is a tool that actually is applicable in other countries where there are often monopoly utility companies without clean sources of power that customers can access. But also, I think it will be helpful as far as raising our profile within the state delegation that will be there, and the governor's office in particular. And then the last item I have is...
For a second, John, what are the 3 events that you'll be presenting at in Paris?
We have 2 events in the green zone presenting on the MCE model. One of them is for ICLEI. They have a group of entities that applied. We actually went through a pretty onerous application process to be selected by ICLEI to present. And thank you to Director Butt for urging us to really get it done, even though it was a lot of work. I think it was worthwhile because now we'll get to present what we're doing on the ICLEI stage. The other is a 90-minute presentation that we'll be sharing with the governor's office and Lean Energy, where we'll be talking about community choice in general and talking a little bit about how it fits within the California framework and the RPS. Because I think this is a little bit of a tangent, but I think it's very interesting that many countries that have multiple suppliers don't have an RPS. And so you can end up with commercial vendors that are selling power that isn't clean. And so it's important to have both elements. And so I think that's something we'll be focusing on in the session here. And then we have one presentation in the blue zone, which is where the credentials are required and the government talks are actually happening. So that'll be a very exciting presentation as well. And we're sharing the stage there with 2 other entities from other countries. One in South America and one that does work in both in Ireland and in Africa. Do you want to say a little more on that?
And what are you going to be doing?
Well, and I do all that, but I also get to go to a reception at the office at the City Hall Mayor's reception, along with 300 mayors from around the world. So that's good. Tom can't go.
That's fantastic. That's just really exciting that MCE is going to be there and you're both going. It's really an honor. So take a lot of pictures. You're going to really, in detail, tell us what happened when you get back. And share your presentations. It would be very helpful.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And we'll be doing a lot of social media to keep folks informed that we're there, and I think that will really help raise the profile of the agency as well.
Absolutely. Fantastic.
And then then the very last item is I just wanted to make sure folks are aware that the holiday party is scheduled for Friday, December 11th. February would be a little late. 6:30 to 10 p.m. at the Falkirk Mansion, which is where we had it last year. And you should have received an invitation by now if you haven't let Darlene know. And if you can RSVP by December 4th, that will help us with planning. We're going to be providing appetizers and snacks. Folks are welcome to bring things, but it's not a requirement. And that's it for my report.
Any questions, comments on the executive director's report? All right.
Can I just ask, just on the Paris trip, are you having to deal with any security issues in preparation for that trip?
I expect there will be very heightened security at the event. We have been made aware that they're canceling 2 events that were going to involve large groups of people. It was going to be on November 30th. And I think that the organizers are, they're disappointed that the government has requested that event be canceled. But the organizers are, I think, looking at a strategy that could be a really nice outcome, which is encouraging cities around the globe to do their own smaller demonstrations to show support for their concern around climate change. And so we're hopeful that will have some success. But the event itself hasn't been impacted as programmatically. Do you want to add anything to that?
Well, we've gotten, the best information I've got is coming out of the office of the mayor of Paris saying this thing is going to go on no matter what. We're not going to let this bother us.
I was reading a blog last week that was talking about the climate summit in Paris as kind of a peace conference, as in some ways a really great follow-up to the tragic events there last week. And so I think it is very important. I'm glad we're going to be there. I think it's a wonderful conversation to be having in a location that's had a very terrible experience lately. So it's a positive, and I know you'll make the best of it.
Yeah, absolutely.
Just be careful.
Yeah.
Just be careful.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Actually, it's probably the safest place in the world.
At this
Right now.
point.
The place is crawling with cops and security.
Absolutely. All right. Anything else in the executive director's report? Okay. So next on our agenda is the consent calendar. We have 8 items, and I'll just say up front, I need to abstain from the first item, which is the board meeting minutes from the October 15th meeting. Is there anything? Yeah.
I also need to abstain from that.
Okay. All right. Any other abstentions on those minutes?
Yes.
Sure.
I need to abstain as well.
I do too.
Was it?
If you read them, you know I was there.
So for abstentions, just to help with our minutes, I have Director Sears, Director Withy, Director Bailey, Director Schwartzman. Who did I miss?
Barbara?
And Barbara Collier, thank you.
We still have a quorum?
There's enough. Director Lyon. Great, thank you.
All right, any item on the consent calendar that anyone would like to discuss or have an issue with in any way? All right, I'd entertain a motion to approve.
I'll move the consent.
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposition? And you have the abstentions, Don. Okay, so on to item 5 on our agenda, which is the certification of the MCE Richmond Solar PV Project Environmental Impact Report. Greg, and
So
I
I know
think we
everyone's
have a
read
lawyer
this
in the room.
lovely document for
Yeah.
all the final comments were responded to and then went out last Thursday. So the document is ready to certify at this point. If there's any questions, our consultants are here. I think we did have some questions that came in. I'll ask Abe and Bruce to step up to the podium and give a presentation on those points.
Right now?
Yeah.
Go ahead and I'll do what we need to do.
Yeah, this is-
Let me introduce myself.
Yes.
Yeah.
You get the microphone, so.
Hello, board members. Good evening. My name is Abe Leader. I'm with Rencon Consultants. We assisted your staff with preparing the environmental impact report for the solar project. We're on part of a team that did that. Didn't prepare a presentation on the entire EIR because I'm sure you've read every page and every word, but I'll give you a little bit of a very short background and then just a quick summary of the main comments we received and the responses to those comments on the draft. So just to step back a little bit, the 3 topics covered in the EIR in detail were biology, hazards and hazardous materials, and hydrology and water quality. All of the topics on the state's environmental checklist are covered in the EIR, but the other ones are in Appendix A in the initial study. those three topics were considered to have potential significant effects, so they were brought forward into the body of the EIR. So the EIR was drafted, circulated for a 45-day period pursuant to state law, and MCE received 5 comment letters on the draft EIR. 2 of those letters had comments that were actually relevant to the analysis and conclusions, one from California Fish and Wildlife and one from an attorney representing several clients. So just as the topics in the EIR were biology, hazards, and hydrology, that was the focus of most of the public comments that MCE received. And in the final EIR, you'll see section 8.0, which is the responses to the comments received. And in that, which is now the biggest part of the EIR, you'll see the letters themselves marked with each comment delineated, and then responses to each individual comment given in that section as well. As far as biology, some of the main comments had to do with the surveys and the research that was done up front to determine what the habitat and species values on the site could be. Some commenters said that certain high-level protocol level surveys were required. You'll see responses in the response to comments chapter. First of all, in chapter 4.1 in biological resources, we cover those issues. Also in responses 2.2, Masterwork Response 5, and several other responses under Letter 5. We go into detail on why the surveys and literature review that were done were sufficient for the site. Not every project under CEQA requires a protocol level survey. It depends on where the project is, what it is. In this case, we have to keep in mind this is a highly disturbed site in the middle of an oil refinery. So although there are some biological resources concerns that are covered in the IR, it didn't need the level of protocol surveys that would be considered the top tier, as it were. So with the surveys that were done and the review of literature and the robust mitigation program, we determined that the impacts would remain as they were identified in the draft EIR, and no further changes were required. There were other comments on specific species, and I'm not going to go ahead and list 20 species for you, but some of them were the harvest mouse, the San Pablo vole, certain bird species like burrowing owls. We reviewed those comments, reviewed the supporting materials with the comments, and determined that the mitigation program that was in the draft EIR was sufficient for them. However, we did add some additional mitigation, not necessary to reduce that impact, which was already done with the mitigation that was in there, but just more to strengthen, clarify, add a little extra layer on top of the mitigation that was already identified. There were several comments on hazards and hazardous material. Oh, I want to say one particular comment that also a board member brought up to us was about effects of potential bird strike. So it's been, one of the commenters asserted that sometimes PV photovoltaic arrays will attract birds. Maybe they think it's a water feature and can crash into them and causing bird mortality. So that issue is addressed in the responses to comments, in particular to comment responses number 5.26, 5.50, and 5.54. There's a couple pages of analysis there. It is something that happens, but it's not a significant environmental impact. It really depends where the array is, how the array is engineered, and several other factors. There's some technical details on that. If you really want to delve in deeper, perhaps the MCE's biologist, Bruce, can give a little more information. In terms of hazards, there are really two main comments. One, so just the context again is that there's two portions to the site. One is a capped landfill, and one is a filled fertilizer pond. So one concern was that the photovoltaic arrays on the landfill cap could somehow, the weight or the distribution could compromise the integrity of that cap. That would mean perhaps rainwater could come in and create water quality impacts to surrounding environments. We did a little extra survey, a little extra research and study just to look extra carefully at that issue. It was covered in the EIR correctly. It was a less than significant impact, but we added a little more information to further support that would not occur based on the capacity of the cap to take a certain amount of weight, and then what the weight of the modules were. Also, the potential settlement of the cap over time has really happened about as much as it can happen, and it's not really expected to be a major concern. Also, one more thing just to keep in mind, these sites are within a remediation area in the refinery, and they're under oversight not just by Chevron's remediation team, which is a full-time team of a number of people, but the Regional Water Quality Control Board also has an ongoing open case there and is monitoring quarterly, annually, pretty much constantly this site and all the infrastructure there on the landfill and the pond. So the other issue on hazardous materials related specifically to the pond site, in that the piles that the tracking arrays would sit on, if they punched too far down through the whole filled pond structure, they could potentially be a conduit for any contaminants in the pond above to go down into native soil or groundwater below. As we talked to the engineers on the project, we looked at the profiles of the piles and the profile of the fill, and those piers would not extend below the liner, so that would not be a significant impact. But again, the first iteration of the CIR was a draft EIR. It goes out, it gets comments. They're good points, and that allows us to relook at it, represent it, and make sure that the conclusions were correct. So we added some additional information just to further bolster those conclusions.
Thank you, that was a helpful presentation. Great. Is there anything
Do you have more
to
comments on the bird?
I have a couple of questions.
Okay.
So, I didn't read the whole EIR, but I did read through the findings. And one of the pages in the findings mentions that bird nesting season is September 16th through January 31st. And maybe that was just a typo, because Fish and Wildlife considers that to be February 1st to August 15th. So was it a typo on the findings?
Board members, thank you for bringing that up. That was actually in my notes here, but I skipped right by it. We did receive that comment. That period actually does fluctuate a little bit depending on the project and the location. But when we received your comment, we looked at it closely, and we think that we should adjust that in the final EIR and make that one small adjustment. It would be to September 1st. That's pretty much the standard. I mean, Bruce can talk a little bit more about what birds have done or haven't done by September 1st, but that seems to be a pretty solid time to go with as far as that interval.
Okay, thanks. And then I have two questions on the hazardous materials. One is the folks that are installing the solar installation. So I have kind of an extensive background in cleanup of hazardous waste sites and dealing with landfills and old hazardous waste landfills, which typically were constructed kind of crummy. So there can be a lot of problems with them even if they're old. My question is, are the workers that will be doing the installation going to have 40-hour health and safety training just in the event? Because they could be potentially exposed to something. Is that your...
One of the mitigations is that all workers that are working on the site have to be HAZWA certified.
Great. Okay, that's good. Thank you. So, and then I have one more question. So there's two parts to phase 2, and one is the 3.5 megawatt facility, and the other facilities discuss non-penetrating. It didn't say that with the 3.5, so I wasn't sure. Is that non-penetrating as well, and it just doesn't say that?
Yeah, the project was originally set up in 3 stages, 3 phases. The final 2 phases were combined to make a single phase, and that's going to be the 3 megawatts, 3.5 megawatts of tracking arrays, which are penetrating, and another 5 megawatts of.
So you're saying the 3.5 is penetrating?
3.5 of the tracking arrays is penetrating. They'll be on the landfill.
So when you're driving those piles?
That's in through clean fill soil.
Oh, it is?
Yeah, that's where the fertilizer ponds were filled with clean fill. So that's where we're actually allowed to
How deep is the fill?
Sorry?
How deep is the
I
fill?
think it's 9 feet is the average depth.
Okay, so you're not going below
I think
that?
the piles will be 5 feet.
Okay. All right, well, that's all I have. Thank you.
Any other questions? Yeah.
You've done a number of EIRs, right? How frequent is it that you get citizens to hire a lawyer who apparently hired a couple of environmental law litigation specialists to go through the EIR in such detail and give such extensive feedback?
It happens from time to time. It's not uncommon.
At the county, it happens all the time.
Oh, okay.
Some projects attract that more than others, but it does happen.
Okay, so you wouldn't read anything into that in terms of what might be coming?
Can I just add to that? That happens all the time. So, I'm sorry. I'll repeat what I just said. Again, Kevin Heroff from the city of Larkspur. That happens all the time. So it's a challenge that we will face when we go through the process of completing this project. But we should not be deterred from moving forward just because that happened.
Dr. Lyman?
And I want to thank you very much for adding the belts and suspenders, the mitigation measures 2D and 2F, which deal with surveys and vehicle speeds. I want to appreciate those. Those are certainly add to, I know the mitigations above and beyond the impacts that you stated, but they certainly go to address many of the comments that were in the correspondence that was just cited. So thank you for adding that.
Any other questions or comments from the board? Is there anyone from the public who would like to comment on this item? Greg, is there anything else that you would like to, do I see someone getting up to come? Come on up.
Good evening, my name is Rachel Koss. I'm here on behalf of Bay Area Citizens for Responsible Solar. We reviewed the final EIR. Most of the issues we identified in our comments on the draft EIR remain unaddressed. But tonight I want to focus on another problem with the environmental review of the project, and that is that CEQA does not authorize Marin Clean Energy to be the lead agency for this project. Therefore, you have no authority to certify the final EIR tonight. CEQA has only two ways to be a lead agency. Either the agency carries out the project, or the agency supervises and approves the project. And Marin Clean Energy is not doing either here. First, Marin Clean Energy is not carrying out the project. Marin Clean Energy is not the project owner. It will not design, construct, or operate the project. It's not the applicant for the City of Richmond's design review permit for the project. Scion Corporation, a private company, is the owner for this project. It will design, construct, and operate it, and it is the applicant for the design review permit with the City of Richmond. Therefore, Scion is carrying out this project. Marin Clean Energy is merely the utility that is buying the electricity generated from Scion's project. Second, Marin Clean Energy has no responsibility for supervising or approving the project. You are not required to issue any entitlements before this project can proceed. It is the City of Richmond that has the authority to approve the project because it has to approve the only discretionary entitlement for this project, which is the design review permit. Because a non-governmental entity, Scion, will carry out the project. Because Marin Clean Energy does not have the responsibility under law to supervise or approve the project, Marin Clean Energy cannot be the lead agency for this project. Marin Clean Energy cannot be the lead agency for this project under CEQA. Marin Clean Energy improperly assumed the role as lead agency, and as a result, the entire CEQA process for this project is invalid. Only the appropriate lead agency, that is the City of Richmond, can conduct the CEQA review for this project. At this time, before the close of the public hearing on the project, I'd like to submit our written comments on the final EIR into the record. I have an original. I have a copy, if you would also like a copy. Shall I leave that here?
Sure, you can give it to Aunt Darlene, that's fine.
I'm sorry.
Thank you.
Do you want an extra copy? That'd be helpful. Right.
Is there anyone else from the public who would like to comment on the EIR? Okay, seeing none.
Can we ask a question?
Sure.
The speaker?
Obviously, you would like to ask the question.
Distribute? I do not. Could you provide that to us in the next day? I can check my office, sure. Yeah, we scrambled to get the paper copy done by the time. Hasn't been electronically formatted yet.
Question for you.
Couple of questions. Who did you say you represent?
Bay Area Citizens for Responsible Solar.
Okay. And I guess the second question I have is, this EIR has been in progress for several months. why is it you've waited until the very last minute to question the choice of the lead agency? Did you just think about that last night?
Actually, no, we just learned last Friday that Marine Clean Energy is not the owner of the project. And then we started sort of digging around and trying to figure out what was going on. And, got some more documents from Marine Clean Energy just this past Tuesday after trying for almost 2 weeks. And, we just put 2 and 2 together, and it was sort of an aha moment, like, oh my gosh, this CEQA process is wrong.
Do you have any other questions? All right. Thank you very much. Was there anyone else from the public who wanted to comment? Greg or other staff, is there anything you would like to add to your report?
Not for me at this time. Questions for me?
Where does CEQA stand on this?
California Environmental Quality Act.
And where do they stand on this matter? Have they spoken in at all?
Well, we did have extensive consultation with the city of Richmond before we took on lead agency status, and they had no issues with it.
CEQA did? CEQA's okay?
Well, CEQA's not an agency per se. I mean,
Yeah.
it doesn't. The city of Richmond does CEQA documents all the time. CEQA puts some projects.
Chairman Sears, you're bringing this back to the.
I'm going to do that. I'm just watching our executive officer and our special outside counsel to see if perhaps coming out of this conversation there'll be something that you want to add.
Yeah, what we'd like to do is, first I have one question for the member of the public, if you could come back. Could you disclose who your employer is as well?
Adams, Broadwell, Joseph, and Cardozo.
Thank you.
I'm sorry, I couldn't understand what you said.
Adams, Broadwell, Joseph, and Cardozo.
Thank you.
Thank you. And I think at this point what would be helpful is if we could move to the next item, and then we'll circle back to this in a few minutes after our council has a chance to review the documents that have just been submitted.
Possibly a way to go. Director Rob, did you want to say something? At this point,
I just
or would
don't
you
know
like
whether
to
it's
wait?
appropriate to, I have a comment on that,
Uh-huh.
what was said, but I don't want to express comments unless it's
Okay.
appropriate.
Yeah, why don't we move on to the next item and come back so our council has an opportunity to look through what we were just handed and provide us some input. That would be helpful.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Snell. All right, so next on our agenda is item number 6, which is the MCE compensation analysis.
Great, so I'm going to introduce this item, and Katie Geyer from our team is also here, as well as Mike Maher from our team to weigh in on this item as well. So we discussed this at our last board meeting, so I won't spend as much time as I did last month on the background, but just a little bit of background. So over the last 9 months, MCE has grown quite a bit as far as the staff participating or contributing to the program and working here in our office. And during the recruitments that we've conducted over the last 9 months, we found that there's been a bit of a mismatch between the compensation ranges that we were associating with varying positions and the needs in the market. We were having trouble attracting folks to fill some of our necessary positions. And so we ended up doing some analyses on an ad hoc basis, position by position, rather than being able to rely upon kind of our original benchmarks that were set out long ago when we were a much younger agency. So it was determined in the spring of last year that it would be more appropriate and a better use of our time and resources to do an overarching compensation analysis for all of our positions. And so that process was conducted over about a 4-month period, and it was presented to the executive committee in the late summer over a couple of months. And what has been recommended is that we make some adjustments to our compensation ranges to bring them in line with where the market is for each position. I think that I should also mention that we brought in external firm that has a lot of expertise in doing this, and they were able to help us identify some additional comparator agencies that we hadn't included before. I think the other thing that helped in this process is that there's some new CCA activity happening in California, and so we were able to look at other CCA programs and get some comparators from those agencies. So I think the process was very comprehensive and resulted in a lot of good data. The next thing that we looked at, and this was discussed quite a bit at the executive committee, is should we be making an adjustment to the range to account for the cost of living and the cost of housing in Santa Fe, because we want to attract folks that are able to live near or in the communities that we're serving. And so after a lot of discussion with the executive committee, it was recommended that we adjust the newly identified compensation ranges by 15% on the top end of the range. And so that recommendation is what's before you tonight. So I'm just going to kind of focus right now on the recommendations to keep it simple. And if folks have questions about any of the process leading up to this, I'm happy to comment. And also we have a number of members of the executive committee here who I'm sure would be happy to comment on the discussions that we've had. So the recommendations for tonight are, first of all, to approve the adjusted compensation ranges to align with the current market study and set the top of each range at 15% above median, keeping the bottom end of the range right where it is. The next, and I should clarify, keeping the range right where it is based on the new compensation study. The second piece of the recommendation is directing staff to adjust existing compensation ranges if needed when new or updated comparators are identified to stay current with market conditions. And this would allow us to stay current and ensure that we're able to recruit in a timely manner when needed. The last item is directing staff to prepare a fiscal year 16 budget adjustment for a future board meeting that uses unanticipated revenue, which we have brought in from damages payments on renewable projects that were delayed in coming online, and using that to offset the staffing adjustment costs. And the staffing adjustment costs are included in the attachment in a spreadsheet that Mike Maher can comment on further if folks have questions. But that's the summary of the recommendations. Happy to take any questions.
So Don, let me ask you a question about the second one, which is directing staff to adjust existing compensation ranges if needed. This is actually to change the range, the salary ranges, not to adjust a particular employee's salary that they are receiving within the range. So you're proposing that staff adjust a compensation range without bringing it back for board approval?
That's what's being proposed.
And
yes.
that's based only on a cost of living, a COLA increase, or what would be the basis of that?
It would be based on, okay, so let's say we have 9 comparators for a specific position. Let's say a regulatory council position. Alameda County might be one, San Francisco Department of the Environment might be another. Let's say Alameda County's position changes, and that's brought to our attention that there's been a compensation adjustment there. We would plug that into the formula for calculating what the range should be with all the comparators that we have for that particular position. And if there's adjustment upward, then, or if there's adjustment in any direction, I guess we would be looking at if that range needs to change. And we could do that on an as-needed basis.
And there's no cap on the amount of adjustment that could be made by the staff without board approval?
That's an interesting point. That's not something that's in the recommendation, but it seems like it could be added and it seems reasonable.
Okay, thanks for that. Other questions?
I have a question.
Yeah, Barbara?
Do I need to move this or not touch it?
You should get closer to the microphone.
I was afraid I wasn't allowed to touch it.
Well, we'll see how you treat it.
So Barbara Kohler. So this was one that I had sent a question to you as well on. My experience, having worked in the public sector for many years, is with many more staff than 30, that I think on recommendation 2, I would say that when the need arises, I think this board currently meets once a month. I really do think that, you know, we're making big adjustments here, which seem reasonable to me, but any new changes, I think it's worth it for the board to, I think, go to the executive committee. I think it could be done without taking a really lengthy amount of time, particularly since I think a lot of the board is on board with the new change, so it would be adjusting things and showing how those things change. So that's my thoughts.
Yeah, I guess the other issue I have with respect to that is there's no limit on how many times during the year an adjustment could be made. And I think all of us are involved in negotiating employee compensation at different times. You know, different jurisdictions change at different times of the year, and so there's often that discussion about when do we do our comparables, and then you're anticipating that another jurisdiction may make a change after that, and you can get yourself into a loop where you feel like you should be making a compensation adjustment 3, 4, 5 times a year, and I don't think that's good for any entity to have that kind of a system. So part of what's troubling me here, I think it's really great that we're making the adjustment and we have a wider range and we're taking into account expensive housing and living expenses. It's challenging for all of us on recruitment and retention, and it's very important that we're paying attention to that. But as a board, it's hard for me to say, have at it, any amount of compensation readjustment, no matter how many times a year, is fine without board approval. That's just that's a hard step to take. So I think it would be appropriate for us to put some limits on that, and perhaps I don't think anyone's necessarily against the notion. It's more of a board oversight issue from my perspective. We do meet frequently. Alternatively, we could say, you know, you do it once a year, halfway through the year, and the adjustment can't be more than X%. I'm just sort of throwing out ideas, and other people may have other thoughts about
I
that.
think one thing, my thought is that, you know, you raised a good point that a lot of these different agencies may have different fiscal years, and negotiations may happen at different times. So I think it really does make sense to say, these are my thoughts, maybe not other board members, that rather than even putting a cap on it, that when you see these changes, that you put together a package that would come to the board and
Or it becomes an executive committee discussion item.
something of that nature, and the executive committee could vet it and then briefly be a board item.
Well, I was just going to say that I actually like it a little bit cleaner. I think it should be part of the budget process. If you're going to do an increase, I think that you should have a reasonable idea on an annual basis of where we're at. And I think if you think there needs to be an increase, then that should be part of the budget package when you present that. And it should be done annually. And I think it takes up extra time, extra staff time every time you do that. I think it's really clean when you're doing it with your budget process. It's a lot of what we do, and it just makes more sense to me. And I think anything should come to the board just because we're held accountable. And although I'm sure everything would be done very thoughtfully, we're always under scrutiny. And I think it's just best practice to do it that way.
Well, the recommendation by the board was to adjust all MCE compensation ranges to align with the current market study. So we're only talking about one market study.
No, not if you get down to item number 2 on the final recommendation.
I think we're only talking number 2.
Chewing on here.
Oh.
That's the one that's making things a little more complicated.
And I think it's important to mention that this item 2 wasn't an item that the executive committee spent a lot of time focusing on. We really focused mainly on item 1 and item 3. I think the executive committee did a really thorough job on 1 and 3. We just didn't have a whole lot of time when it got to the end of the day. So I really like the feedback on item 2. I think that the goal, the intention of that item was administrative simplicity, and I think I'm hearing some really strong arguments why the opposite approach would actually be administratively simple.
Director Harrell?
I just want to comment on that. What you just said was absolutely accurate. We did have a lot of discussion about all these items. In the executive committee, we had more consensus on items other than 2, and that's the reason we're here tonight, is to talk about item number 2. So let's have a robust conversation about that. But I want to personally reinforce Carla's comments about keeping this within the framework of our budget, because that really provides us with a bigger picture of the impact of these decisions on our overall cost structure, how it compares to our revenue stream. You know, one of the things we discussed in the executive committee is trying to make sure we have some perspective on on what these impacts on our overall budget really are, when our biggest cost overall is procurement of energy. And the impact of what we're discussing here tonight relative to that is small. So we need to keep that larger budgetary perspective in mind. If we see things going out of line in terms of our budgetary expectations, that's something we need to pay attention to. But I'm really concerned about the fact that we are not just, we are a JPA, we are comprised of governmental entities, so we do have to be respectful of how governmental entities work. But we're also a competitive business enterprise in a market setting. And we need to make sure that our management has the flexibility and discretion to make decisions within a reasonable framework to attract and retain capable people. And I think that's the overall goal that we were seeking to achieve in our discussions in the executive committee. And I hope that's an important theme that we preserve in the discussion we have on item 2 tonight.
Thank you, Director Schwartz.
Well, I thank you, and I agree with those comments wholeheartedly. I think it needs to be a part of the budget process. It's what we would do in the city of Benicia when we're talking about any of this. I know the intent is not for staff to have carte blanche to be able to do what they want. I know that's the intent. But when you read it, it's kind of what it sounds like. And I don't think we wouldn't do it in Benicia, and I don't think we should do it here. I really like the comments of an annual basis. 1 year is not that long of a time to be able to come back during the budget hearings, to be able to put together a proposal to do whatever it is to stay with the market studies. So to me, I think that's the prudent way to go.
Director Lyman.
Yeah, Director Lyman. In El Cerrito, just this last meeting, we actually took up a similar, staffing change. So it's not something the city manager has carte blanche to do on his own, and has to come forward for the electeds to understand what changes are being made. I do like the idea of it being part of the budget process, but at a minimum, it should be, it was a consent item. At a minimum, it should be a consent item. If there's one that's way out of whack and we have to do a mid-year change, it should be something that we are aware of and are taking up as an action. So I can support the annual process, but at a minimum, it should be a consent item.
So I completely agree with the comments of my fellow board members here. But I do want to just harken back to something that I said in September at our retreat. And I really believe this organization needs a CFO. We're in the little town of Tiburon with a $10 million budget, and we have a finance director. And is also double as the human resource person. And we don't have a finance director or a CFO. And we have a budget of $150 to $175 million this year. And Tiburon only has a budget of about $10, $11 million. And when I read through the entire agenda tonight, I saw a crying need for it. Crying need. One, there was a thing in the budget prepared by John that talked about now that we're going to spend $92,000 on a business letter of credit, which is really an extravagant fee that we should absolutely be trying to avoid. We need someone in this organization who can bring business acumen and business contacts to avoid having to use letters of credit to purchase power. I also saw in the budget this issue where the issue that we're talking about tonight, where the salaries are not tied to the budget. And I even saw a comment that said, well, we got an extra $350,000 from the contract not performing, we'll just apply it that way. I mean, those are the types of things that a finance director would not allow. And this organization is big enough to have somebody in a position of responsibility that reports to the board, that comes to every meeting, not just a little $50,000 accountant number cruncher, I'm talking about somebody who's senior, who can address these type of issues. We're already spending $175,000 for an accountant that was also on our consent calendar today. You know, these are the things that we need to get a handle on, especially now that we're going to continue to grow. And I'd like the board to seriously consider some sort of reconfiguration that brings in a finance director or a CFO to deal with some of these issues.
Thank you. I think there are comments from over here. Does someone have a hand up?
Well, I just wanted to say quickly that if we approve recommendation 1, we're bringing the scale up to where you want. So if we start looking at this on an annual basis, I don't think we need to be doing interim time periods. I think we're going to be right where we need to be. And I also was struck, I think it's really important that when you present your budget, your salary costs are your salary costs. And if you happen to bring in, I look at a penalty that you might get, like we might get a construction penalty, that's a one-time fund. Those funds, you usually make a decision when you get one-time funds, those usually go to a facilities fund or for capital improvements, but they don't go to the regular budget process, the regular cost of doing business. That's not what you do use your extra funds for. So I wholeheartedly agree. I think we really need to look for, I would definitely support a CFO.
So I'm hearing a new issue coming up
Something-
here that doesn't relate directly to
Yes.
the issue at hand. I think we could agendize this maybe for our next executive committee. I have a lot of comments and feedback on the items that were laid out. And I'd be very happy to respond to each of those items, but I think it'd be more appropriate to do it when we've agendized the item for discussion.
Just for a point of order, it's not a new item. It was brought up in September at the retreat.
Right, I just mean it's
And
not on our
at the
agenda.
time, there was a lot of support in the room for that particular idea. And I think if you show a quick show of hands, how many people kind of support this notion, I think you'd find to be.
I think it is appropriate though to agendize the items so
That's
we
fine,
really
yeah.
can have a
That's
full
fine.
full
No
discussion.
problem.
I think we're all in favor of a more complete discussion, so we'll agendize it. Director Lyon and then Director.
Gary Lyon. One thing I didn't see in here, and I don't know if you discussed it with the compensation committee, was what are we doing for our existing employees in terms of actually phasing in the new rangers? Is that something that will be done at some point for everybody? Well, I assume you normally do the annual review. I don't know if you plan to just stay on the annual review and then use the new ranges there. But some people that just got reviewed last month, they're gonna be waiting for a long time
Yeah.
to get back in sync. I was just wondering if it made sense to, at the beginning of the year, or at some point, phase in something for everybody, because I think we're kind of admitting we're below the market, we need to get this thing active.
Yeah, great. So yeah, that's an excellent question. So of course, the way that we implement the change tonight will be, first off, for any of our staff who are falling below the bottom of the range, and that is the case for a handful of staff, we will be immediately bringing them at least to that bottom point, starting December 1. So that would be done right away. Then at the annual evaluation process, we would be looking at the kind of the standard performance-based increase, which ranges typically from 3 to 5%, 0 to 5% really, depending on performance. And if we're also seeing due to the new ranges, if we're seeing that someone is really much lower in the range than they should be given their performance, I would be giving our director level folks the authority to go to apply an additional maximum of 5% over the next 2 years. So that will ensure we don't have a huge spike. But those numbers have been incorporated into the attachment, which you'll see, that shows what we project the impact to be for each budget year, this budget year and the following 2 budget years.
You know, to try to get through this has been to the executive committee twice. We've discussed it. This is the second time we've discussed it. And if you leave out item 2 under staff recommendations, the executive committee voted unanimously to support 1 and 3. And I'm thinking that to move this forward, we could either do one or two things. We could either just leave out item 2 and take it up at a later date, or we could reword it slightly to say, to say that when new or updated comparatories are identified, to stay current with market conditions, but not more than once yearly. Then that would limit it to,
As part of the budget process.
yeah, once yearly as part of the budget process. It would come back, or, and it would come back to the whole body to approve. So, I'd be prepared to make a motion. I'd like to get a feeling if people would, support tweaking number 2 and then approving the rest. I think that would take care of it for now. Then we can take up the CFO things and second item.
We have a comment from Director Schwartz.
Well, I was just going to say, I think I would just lean to just eliminate it totally, because without something in there, I believe staff would have to come back. Okay, unless you really think that we need to have language in there specifying annually to the budget. And I could go either way, but I think eliminating it, there's no opportunity for that to happen.
Eliminating 2.
2. No, 1 and 3, I get it. That's
Yeah.
fine.
Director
So
Harris.
I'm agreeing with you on doing something with 2. I just think just take it out.
Okay. Director Harris.
It's simple.
I think you're on now. Yeah.
Again, Kevin Dropp from the City of Lawrenceburg. I think that your suggestion about a little addendum to 2 is a good one. I would modify it slightly and just make it some language that would say, subject to board oversight as part of the annual budgetary review process. That gives us the opportunity, I think, to be responsive to some of the comments that we've heard about the need to put it within the framework of the budget, providing that annual review process and engagement with the board, but not limiting staff on an ongoing basis to make decisions, knowing that they will have that oversight on a case-by-case basis, depending on market conditions, the individuals that they have in front of them, and other considerations that they need to deal with on a real-time basis.
Sloan Daly from Corvadero. I also just want to offer for the board a piece of information that you're not aware of here, which is that at the executive committee we had very impassioned pleas made to us by a couple of current employees here at Marine Clean Energy. One of whom is at a managerial level, another one, I'm not sure what his level was, but the takeaway from that was we have a motivated staff who believe in the cause, and who are here primarily for that reason, but that there's a breaking point where your heart can only take you so far and they need more money. So whatever we do, Tom, it's a smart, my new suggestion, to do at least something, at least number 1 in some way, right away.
I don't think there's any dispute about that, actually, Director Wiki.
Right with these also to go. Dawn, could you help me understand how you do performance reviews and salary adjustments? Is this done for all employees on an annual basis at a particular time, or is it staggered based on employees' hire date and so on? How do you actually do the compensation part of the cycle? What's the cycle?
Yeah, so we have a pretty clear process. When an individual is hired into a position, we establish the compensation based on where the experience and education, where we expect the person to fall within the range based on the job description for the position. And so that's what determines where they're going to land within the range initially. Then we always do a 3-month review. And at that 3-month review time, there are some occasions where we need to make adjustments based on performance and kind of a fit, really. We look at the fit in those first 3 months. How is this person fitting into the position and the role? And then from that point forward, there's an annual review process that we're actually very rigorous in following. And at the annual review process, there's not only a lot of written feedback and a meeting, but there's also a look at the compensation range and if there's a need for a performance bump. And the range of the bump is between 0 and 5%. Someone who's doing a very good job, improving in the expected ways, might expect a 3% bump. Someone who's really done an exceptional job, had to take on a lot of new things, and is exceeding expectations would be more at the 5%
Right.
range.
But all employees are done at the same time of the year.
No. It varies because when a person is hired, that's what triggers the time schedule. So they have a 3-month review, and then from that point forward, their annual review happens at that 1-year mark.
Okay. Because a way to sort of tile this together is, many companies, for instance, I'm not referring to agencies here, go to an annual review cycle, so you sort of do compensation all at one time. It's easier to link to the budget, and as the prelude to that, one would then do your comparator study on an annual basis, and before you even begin the salary process, the adjustment process, you would do that comparison on a regular basis once a year, tied in with you.
So if I could make a suggestion, I think actually we may want to clarify, if we leave 1 as it is, but Don, your intention is to make the salary adjustments for employees who are below the range, make that effective as of December 1.
Correct.
I think we want to make that clear, because you're not simply asking for to adjust the compensation ranges, you're also intending to apply that very, very quickly, and I think we're all in favor of that. I'd like to make that clear. I think we could also add language to the effect that it's the expectation of the board that each year on an annual basis, as part of the budget process, staff will look at our comparators to make sure that the agency is staying current with market conditions. And so we can then do the specific analysis as part of the budget process. And then we leave 3 and 3 as is. Does that address people's concerns? So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? Yes.
I agree with that entirely.
Yeah.
I just want to make sure we're clear on the specific language that we want to add to number 2, because I think that's where you're saying.
I can't repeat it, so you're just going to have to.
Well, I had some language, but which I will suggest, which is simply adding clause to the end of 2. We can discuss refining it. And I think actually, Ray, your comments were very appropriate. So what I just written down is simply subject to the board's oversight as part of the annual budget review process. Now, your points actually, I think, are a little more refined than what that captures. So if we can use that as a basis and maybe add something.
I'm actually not willing to go there, because I think Ray has interesting ideas, but that truly is our executive director's decision, and that may be further discussion about whether we want to change all salary compensation adjustments to be on the same schedule rather than individual reviews. So I would prefer not to make a specific directive about everybody's going to be evaluated at the same time during the year, but that we will use the budget process as an opportunity to make sure that we are keeping current with the market.
Then can we use the language that I suggested?
No, because I don't think it actually accomplishes that exactly.
Okay.
Would you like me to take a stab at the language?
Yeah. As part of the motion, I know that we've had a motion and it's been made. I just want to make sure there's no public comment on the matter.
Well, no, I may go there. Yeah, but
Okay.
thanks for that reminder. Did you
And
have a
then,
comment?
I just wanted to make sure that it's actually 4 recommendations now, if I heard the motion correctly. 1, as is. 2, which is to allow for the immediate adjustment of anybody who is not in the range once they're adopted.
Well, no, it does very specifically that there will be an immediate adjustment for any employee not within the range effective December 1st.
Correct. That's not in
I
here
wanted
at
the
all.
date. No,
That's
that was part of what I said.
Right.
Yeah.
And then the third, the next one is something to the effect of any changes would come back to
As
the
part
board.
of the annual budget process,
Okay.
there will be a review of our comparators to ensure that the agency is keeping current with market conditions.
But does that come back to the board?
I would as part of the budget process.
Okay.
That was my assumption, so
No,
that's why you wanted your language.
That's a refinement. We're on the same page.
Okay.
What you just suggested is a
Okay.
refinement of what I
Okay.
said. I'm just trying
Okay.
to cut to the chase. Okay, that's fine.
Okay, you're okay with that now? And then we keep number 3 as is.
Okay, so I'm not sure
Are
if
we
I
all-
got that language, but I think I have language that reflects it, so let me take a stab. Direct staff to adjust existing compensation ranges annually if needed when new or updated comparators are identified to
No.
stay
No.
current with market conditions.
No, we are
Okay.
directing staff as part of our annual budget
I
process.
put that at the end, so that we can keep the.
No, but we're not directing you to make an automatic adjustment without a board review. We're redirecting the analysis of our comparators to
Okay.
make sure that we're keeping current with market conditions as part of the annual budget process, which comes to the
I'm
board for
totally with you,
review.
I just hadn't said that yet, so the end part is.
But the
and
part
bring-
you just said I don't agree with, because that just provided you the ability to make an automatic adjustment.
But it's not automatic, but, I mean, we can put it at the beginning. I think the key part is, and bring to the board as part of the annual budget process for approval.
Why do you read the whole thing again now, since I managed to interrupt you so effectively?
Okay, no problem. So the first part of all the text in item 2 could remain the same, but we'd need to insert the word annually after ranges. So it would be direct staff to adjust existing compensation ranges annually. And then at the end, before we finish the sentence, we say to stay current with market conditions and bring to the board for approval as part of the annual budget setting process.
You actually, I'm sorry, didn't mean to interrupt, but what you actually said was, as part of the annual budget process, to review the market structures, not automatically jump to an increase, but to have that review of that analysis and bring that in the budget process. And in that budget process, we may then determine that with what you've presented us, we will agree to change that range.
That's great. So we would start the sentence with, as part of the annual budget setting process, direct staff to.
Right, direct staff to review our comparators,
Review.
and the compensation ranges of our comparators
Okay.
to ensure that we are keeping current with market conditions,
May I?
subject to board approval. Who's
Which
the
is, I
director
agree
for it?
exactly with the
Do you have
direction you're
better
going.
wording that's more elegant?
No, your wording was wonderful.
Could you repeat that? I want to make
No,
sure I
I
get it right.
No, it's twice, almost identical, that's pretty good. The idea is that the emphasis on the budget, okay? And so the potential compensation is a part of the budget, not the budget is going to support the compensation change.
Exactly. potential
And
compensation
that's why
part
we
of
need to
the budget
emphasize the
process.
budget
And that's
first.
why it comes back
And I
to
like
the board as
changing
part
it
of
to
the budget
review,
process.
not to adjust. So,
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Okay,
Yeah.
okay.
You'll get it, Dawn, if you get yourself away from the current language of 2.
Yeah, so we'll just start with, as part of the annual
Which is-
budget setting process, direct staff to review. And then the rest of it seems to fall into place.
Okay, and then number 3 as is. Am I missing a part? Number 4, you had 4. Anyway. Are we all sort of on the same page, because I can't repeat it?
The fourth one is your one that allows for immediate adjustment of those that are below.
That's right. Okay.
So has my motion been?
Has your motion been added? Put that
Actually,
together?
I'm sorry.
Actually, I thought it was perfect. It was exactly what you said the first time.
Is there a number 4?
That was just that you were going to adjust the salary ranges immediately as of December 1st.
For those that are not in range.
Okay.
You can go back and listen to it tape, Dawn, because we've
Yeah,
been
now I
through it
got
several
that.
times. So
You made
Director
that
O'Hara?
part.
Just for clarification, Dawn, can you read what you have now written down, the language for number 2?
Sure. So as part of the annual budget setting process, direct staff to review existing compensation ranges if needed when new or updated comparators are identified to stay current with market conditions.
That's what I thought.
Yeah, see, that's the problem. I think, if Dawn, if you would just don't look at 2 at all, right? And what we're going to say is, as part of the annual budget process, we will look at compensation ranges of comparators to ensure that the agency is staying current with market conditions. Or something else. Honestly,
You
it
can
shouldn't be
capture,
quite that
you can
hard.
capture that, that's fine. What I was troubled by with the language that we were batting around a moment ago
Yeah.
was that the impression that I had that was creating limitations on staff to make case-by-case compensation decisions, and I don't want to do that. I think your language actually
Well,
accomplishes
staff
that.
can make case-by-case compensation decisions within the range that we have set.
Yes.
But if they're going outside those ranges, that happens
Right.
during the annual budget process that
Right.
comes to the board.
I agree.
Right?
Okay,
All right.
okay, so that's fine, we're good.
Okay, good.
And
So
all
we
of this goes to the reason of why we use a finance director. With gravitas.
Yes, it
Oh, no, we
does.
still mess with motion, right? So
Full-time
we
or
have a
part-time?
motion, and do we have any public comment, if anyone can recall what we've been saying? Anyone from the public want to comment on this item? Seeing none, I've got a motion, do I have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposition? Any abstentions? Okay. Phew, we did it. Amazing. All right, so, Don, at this point, would you like to go on to the energy efficiency update or come back?
Yeah, that would
I'm
be
not
good.
sure. You want to go on to energy efficiency update?
Yeah, let's do
Okay.
that.
Item 7.
I hate to break away from the riveting CEQA conversation, which I know is yet to come. Do we have the clicker for advancing slides? You're welcome to do it from me. Okay, great. Good evening. As you all can tell, I'm losing my voice a little bit, so apologies and feel free to ask me to repeat myself. If anything, it's hard to hear. My name is Becky Menta. I'm Director of Energy Efficiency, for those of you who don't know me, which I think is primarily everybody who's left. So I'm just here to give an update on the programs, which I'm excited about. So if we can move forward. So for our overview today, and I stole a little bit of the thunder of our communications director, who has a really beautiful new format for the presentation, which when I saw, I immediately stole. So just so you know, this is her hard work and not mine, but it looks really good. So first we're going to talk about a program update for what we've done for 2015 to date. As we move towards the end of the year, we're starting to get a pretty good idea of where we stand. And then for our 2016 application, I had a few updates on that one as well. So for the next slide. Again, this is our energy efficiency program update page. This is just sort of an overall capture of our savings to date in each of the programs. And again, this is on an MMBTU basis, which just means that it's both our electricity program-related savings as well as our natural gas program-related savings. And the one thing I want to comment on this slide is just, again, I've been really pleased with the continued increased trajectory that we've had in savings with each of our programs. We've really demonstrated the ability to ramp up effectively. So for the next slide, go back one. Again, for multifamily program updates, what you see here, which I've mentioned before, is that there tends to be a really long, slow development process for projects, and then a huge increase when that one project hits. Currently, we're going to see a dramatic twofold increase or more in those savings before the end of this year. We're closing out final testing phases of two more than 300 unit projects that have been finished, one in Marin and one in Richmond. And so this is going to be a dramatic increase in the savings that we'll see in a matter of weeks, which is really exciting for us. On a number of that, we have a number of smaller projects that are moving through the pipeline, getting direct install process completed, a few odd boiler updates here and there. So what you see here is actually not nearly as robust as what we're going to see before the end of the year. We're on target to exceed our goals for the multifamily program. So that's really exciting news. And on the next slide, I am excited to also mention that we were able to get a site visit from one of the CPUC staffers who serves as the liaison for CCA. This staffer in particular usually deals with the procurement-related issues and interactions with PG&E, hasn't had as much exposure to our energy efficiency program. So it was great to actually have a direct install planned and scheduled so he could come on site and walk through. And this is actually Andrew with Marin City Community Development Corporation, who oversees the direct install team, holding up one of the most unique light bulbs we've ever seen in our lives. It's like a 200-watt light bulb that somebody had in one of their units. So even just that one bulb, for able to claim existing conditions is huge savings. So, other things worth mentioning for multifamily, we had an improved funding increase of about $400,000. This is because our program is waitlisted. We had oversubscription in our program for the first time. And because of that, we were able to open it up to a new pipeline, which is why we're looking to exceed our goals this year, which is very exciting. I already mentioned our active installations, which are going in right now. Some of those are very comprehensive projects, everything from windows installation, building envelope, HVAC, as well as a direct install for tenant units. So they're very exciting projects. One thing I'm really excited to mention, I think I've mentioned this peripherally, but we have now fully transitioned to LED lighting in our direct install program. Previously, when we went through and replaced bulbs for all the tenant units, we were replacing that with CFL technology, but now we've shifted over to LED. We find that has much higher customer satisfaction, but also reduces concerns about mercury and other hazardous materials in the waste. So this is something we're really proud to have done. So I think we can move on from there. For the commercial update, just continues to plug on very solidly. This program has a continual robust pipeline of small commercial projects that come through. This one is also on target to exceed at least the electricity goals before the end of this year. We continue, as you'll see up here, to have a negative drag on the therm savings. What we found, I know I've mentioned this before, is that it's been very, very challenging to get comprehensive upgrades in small commercial settings. Primarily lighting, refrigeration tend to be the two measures that we can get most effectively there. So we are exceeding our goals on the electric side, but we won't be on the therm side. So that's a disappointment and something that we're strategizing for 2016, how to switch up our program, possibly bring on a new program implementer to do a better job there. And the single family program, again, 241,000 home utility reports delivered. This is something I like to look at there just because that's reports delivered to customers in their home that remind them that MCE has energy efficiency programs, reminds them of how their consumption patterns are impacting their monthly budget, and they can be a really powerful tool for folks to actually take action in their homes. Not just as a result of that, but also as a result of outreach activities we've done in schools. We have almost 2,000 action plans created, so 1,800 folks. Some of you board members have actually gone on and gone through the process of auditing your home and developing an action plan to say how you're going to save energy. So it's a tool we continue to work on. The one last thing I wanted to send to you, and I realize this graphic got distorted, so I apologize for that. Just a reminder that we post this information on our website on a monthly basis. So if you're ever curious, if you ever want to draw it up, look at the information, ask us questions about it, the link is down at the bottom of this graphic, and this is just a little image to show you where you can find it. Just at the top of our MCE website, there's an energy efficiency bar, and it's on that drop down. It's program results. So feel free to look anytime. Let me know if you're looking for it and you don't find it. Now moving into 2016 application updates. I'm thrilled and beyond excited to mention that we officially filed the application with the CPUC in October of this last month. It was only a year and a half in the making. The final document includes not only the business plan that you all have seen and have before you tonight, but the program implementation plans, which have the more detailed implementation strategies for each sector, the actual application itself, which is 20 pages, and come on, Sloan, I know you're not going to let me down, you're going to read that one too. That's a really actually phenomenal piece of work that Michael on the regulatory team put together, and it does a really, really great job of laying out some of the foundational arguments for why we want the default administrator status that we requested, why we're looking for such an expansion of programs. It just is a really phenomenal piece of work, and I would recommend it if you have a chance and if you're curious about some of the arguments that we've made that you look into it. Couple things I wanted to highlight that are in that application, talking points for you to consider if you get asked about it or if you're curious about it. One of the things that we again wanted to reiterate is our position as a single point of contact and as a critical hub. This is also a graphic that's in front of you because it's a little hard to read the language on the slide up above, and I apologize for that. But essentially what we're presenting here is our position as a local government agency gives us a strategic advantage over other implementers in that we already have these relationships with community organizations, contractors, the water utilities. Members of our board sit on boards of these other local agencies and have in the past helped facilitate connections for us that have really helped expand our program reach. Community organizations, our public affairs team did over 200 public events this year that they participated in. I mean, that's an incredible presence out in the community, and it's something that we can leverage. So again, it just really solidifies our role at the center of all these activities. Another thing I wanted to talk about is the greenhouse gas impacts of our plan. These are actually graphics that are in the business plan, but if you haven't taken the time to read through them with a fine-tooth comb, you may not have captured them. So I wanted to pull them out for your special consideration today. What you see on the left on this graphic is the greenhouse gas impacts associated with electricity purchases. So the avoided greenhouse gas emissions associated with our electricity purchases. Because we're cleaner than the default provider, we're saving close to 59,000 tons of CO2 in the years that we've been operating between 2010 to 2013. We've compared against that our projected savings from the 2016 application. And what we find is that we're about 30% of the GHG emissions on the same time period. So that's pretty exciting for us that just by doing energy conservation and demand reduction, we can achieve also some pretty significant impacts on greenhouse gas mitigation, which is, I believe, why many of us are here.
That's a great slide.
Thank you. Next steps, now that the application has officially been filed and accepted by the commission, there will be, they always say, what you think is the 80% of the work is actually the 20%. Protests will be due December 14th, and I anticipate a fairly robust set of protests from the utilities. Early 2016, we will be hosting a workshop so that parties can come and hear more about our proposal, ask us questions, talk more about it. We'll have hearings and further testimony as part of the proceeding schedule, so those will be coming up likely early 2016, and then there will be a proposed decision. We don't anticipate a proposed decision anytime sooner than April. It could be as late as September. We're obviously going to push to have it be on the sooner side because we'd like to get started on these programs. So I think the last thing again I wanted to show you is that we have all of these documents up on our website as well. In fact, anytime the Energy Efficiency Program files a regulatory document, we post those to our website. Again, if you go to the top folder, or the top bar with the Energy Efficiency tab, regulatory documents is an option, and the link is on the bottom of this page as well. And then just again, to remind you, all that was included in that full application, you see that everything is there, the application, the testimony, notice of availability, and then all of our implementation plans and all of our E3 calculators, which is where the technical analysis to support our cost effectiveness is found. So again, feel free to follow those links yourself or let me know if you want to see any of those documents. And with that, I'm happy to answer any questions.
So not a question, Becky, but I'm going to send you a photo, and this sort of relates both to energy efficiency issues and also to what's going to be discussed in Paris. I was not at the last board meeting because I was in India and Rajasthan. And your presentation reminded me that while I was out looking at extremely old cities and old forts and palaces, I took a photo of wind energy generation turbines in the distance from Jaisalmer, a very old town. And Rajasthan generates a tremendous amount of wind energy that it exports to other parts of India. So it's kind of a model of what the government is trying to get all the different states to do to really get heavily into wind power. And I'm going to send it to Rafi in particular because he'll like it. But I thought you'd appreciate that. Last place you really expected to see these huge wind turbines was out in the desert in Rajasthan.
Well, you reduce your load, you can really sell a lot more energy.
Exactly.
So
well, when you're riding camels and you're doing wind power, you're pretty good on your greenhouse gases.
I just want to congratulate our energy efficiency team for all the hard work that you all have done this year for getting that application on file. We've all been supportive of your effort. I think it's terrific, and the fact that you've been able to manage the administrative process that allowed you to get that thing on time with everybody happy, subject to review, with what you've done is a real accomplishment, and I just want to express my own personal appreciation, and I'm sure everyone in the board will agree with me.
Thank you very, very much. And I'll pass that along to my team who's really taking the brunt of both doing this application while keeping the pipeline moving.
You bet.
Other comments, questions for Becky? Okay.
Looks like you're
Anyone for the public comment on this
conversation if you're ready.
Great, thank you, Becky. All right, so do we want to move on to the communications update at this point? So Doug, do we want to move on to the communications update at this point?
We can take up item 5 and then do communications after.
Okay, super, all right, so let's come back to item 5. Yeah, is there something that the staff would like to, we're here now at the board for discussion of this item, so, but I think we were looking for staff and council, if you wanted to provide us with any input at this point. And if not, I think we have at least a comment from Director Harrod, perhaps others.
Well, if the pleasure of the board, I'm ready to go ahead and respond briefly to some of the comments that were provided previously. Again, Dave Snow, outside counsel. The commenter asserted that the MCE would not be the appropriate lead agency for this project. Under the CEQA guidelines, there are various criteria for identifying what the proper lead agency would be. The first criteria is if a project will be carried out by a public agency, that agency shall be the lead agency, even if the project would be located within the jurisdiction of another public agency. And then there are other criteria, one of which is where more than one public agency equally meet the criteria that is also set forth in the guidelines, the agency which will act first on the project in question shall be the lead agency. So with that background, in September of 2014, this board authorized the exploration of this site for a potential solar project and to look at undertaking the environmental analysis of a solar project on this site. And to look into leasing the subject property for that solar project. MCE is the lessee of the subject property at this point. The lessee under that lease has an obligation to comply with the California Environmental Quality Act and to obtain all necessary permits for the development of the project, including those from the city of Richmond. There are provisions that allow the lessee to sublet the sublease, which in this case I understand would be to Stein, can be not any longer than to allow the developer to realize the tax credit benefits, basically a financing mechanism for this project. Ultimately, it's my understanding that this project will be owned by MCE. With respect to the mitigation measures, as you'll recall from the mitigation monitoring and reporting program, MCE is the implementing entity for those agencies. Those measures, excuse me. They will be overseeing STION and directing to ensure that those mitigation measures are being complied with. I would also note that Richmond has participated in this process as a responsible agency and acknowledging MCE's role as the lead agency. Finally, even if Richmond was an appropriate lead agency along with MCE, which I don't believe it is, the agency that acts first is the lead agency, and here MCE has and is acting first on this project, and therefore would be the appropriate lead agency. With that, I think I'll turn it over to Greg for a brief comment, and then the biological and environmental experts have very brief comments as well. Thank you.
That's very helpful.
So the commenter addressed additional comments that we have executed other PPAs in the Central Valley for one particular project, the city of Corcoran, which is the Cottonwood Solar Project. That project was one of the first contracts we signed, but actually was commenced through the developer and the city of Corcoran long before we came into the process. So that agency did in fact start the process, and that's why the city of Corcoran was the lead agency for that CEQA document.
All right. Good evening.
Madam Chair, board members, a leader again with Rincon Consultants. So MCE's environmental coordinator, Bruce Barnett, and myself took a look through the letter at the other comments that Mr. Snow and Mr. Rem didn't talk about, the actual environmental comments. And they appear to be the same ones generally as in the original letter. In other words, the same comments that we already responded to in the final EIR. We didn't see anything really different there.
Thank you very much. Okay. Anything else from staff or council or our consultants on this issue?
Unless there are questions.
Okay, any questions for staff or the board? Comments from the board? Director Hara.
First of all, I appreciate the original commenters' participation in tonight's hearing and making offering the thoughts that were provided. I also appreciate the response that we got on the legal issue, particularly with respect to the selection of lead agency in this case. I just wanted to reflect on my own personal experience where I've seen ample precedent under CEQA for allowing flexibility in the choice of lead agencies for the performance of environmental review for projects. And I see nothing inconsistent with both the CEQA guidelines and that precedent in the role that MCE is playing as the agency for this project. So I am glad we're able to do that because I think we're in the best position as an entity participating in the success of this project to be the lead agency. Appreciate the role that Richmond will play in its review process, and we carry on. Thank you.
Comments from the board, Director Kohler.
Barbara Kohler, Fairfax. So I also wanted to say, having worked in a public sector agency for 22 years in a state agency and then subsequently in a regional government agency for 5, I've personally been involved in many CEQA projects. And my experience is the same as Director Harris. It's not unusual for there to be one agency potentially looked at as a responsible agency, but actually the lead. And so for the CEQA analysis, to me, this is completely consistent with what I've experienced having done CEQA for 30 plus years and developed those documents and made discretionary decisions based on those documents. So seems to fit with my experience as well. But I really appreciate the legal analysis. I think that's helpful. Thank you.
More comments? All right.
Can I say something?
Yes, please.
I want to say that it's a sad day that the California Environmental Quality Act has really become less and less about the environment, and more about power. And Governor Brown has tried to address that with reforms to CEQA, and seems like this is right up the alley.
No.
And Director Whiting tonight, welcome to the meeting. Thank you for coming.
Thank you. It's been a sad day for a while.
I appreciate it.
In secret.
All right, other comments? If not,
I'll move the item, move the staff recommendation to certify the EIR.
I have a second.
I second that.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposition? Any abstentions?
I'm sorry, can we make sure that the motion includes the second part, which is directing staff to begin implementation?
Thank you very much. Would you like to revise your motion?
We did the staff motion. We did the staff.
Direct staff to what?
Implement the project.
I'm reading the staff report. It says, certify the final MCE Richmond Solar PV project environmental impact report. And what was the second part?
And implement.
And direct staff to proceed and implement the project.
And direct staff to proceed to implement the project.
Is that your motion?
That's a new motion.
That's a new
That's a new
motion.
motion. I will second that.
Thank you very much. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposition? Any abstentions? That's approved. Thank you very much. Appreciate it. All right, now it's time to come back to our communications update.
Thanks, Aaron. Great, you can move to the next slide. Oh yeah, enjoy this slide. This is actually a picture from the county of Marin here. I was going for the fall theme with my slide, so you'll notice in the images. The first thing I wanted to talk to you guys all about is our customer participation and enrollments. I've been continuing to report very happily that our light green customer base is still growing. Since September, we've had almost 400 light green customers sign up. Those were for people who were previously opted out, which is really exciting. I wanted to also let you guys know that we are doing a small enrollment of about 200 customers. It's scheduled for December. Those 200 customers are from all over our service area, so Marin, Richmond, Napa, El Cerrito, Benicia, and San Pablo. And we became aware of this group of customers earlier this year. They were never offered service. They should have been. It was a PG&E error, and so we're sending out enrollment notices to them now, and they're scheduled for December. It's only about 200, but you might hear from your friends or associates that they're getting enrollment notices, and that's the reason for it. I also wanted to report on our Deep Green participation. We've had 114 Deep Green signups.
since September. Also fantastic news. I think that's for a variety of reasons. We still have our advertising campaign that's really saturating the media in our service area. We also have the advocates doing all kinds of work for us that you guys just heard about last month, promoting Deep Green. We mailed out the Power Content label, which we also talked about last month, and you guys received a copy of, and that promoted Deep Green. And as you'll see here, and actually next slide, Darlene.
Before you leave, Jamie, is the 114 since September spread throughout our service area?
It's spread throughout our service area.
Not clustered anywhere?
It's not, there's not a big focus of clustering anywhere, yeah. It's spread throughout the service area.
Thank you.
And I see you guys are all looking at the documents that I passed around. You'll see the smaller brochure is our new 100% renewable brochure. So that is advertising Deep Green and also local soul. And I think one of the reasons we're also seeing a spike in Deep Green signups is because for the first time, we're allowing people to sign up for Deep Green at events with MCE staff without their PG&E account number, which obviously, well, maybe not so obvious to you because you weren't at the event trying to sign people up, but it's a big hurdle to try and get people to sign up because they have to find their bill and their account information. So now they can sign this form and hit it to an MCE staff member, and we're seeing lots of people sign up for Deep Green. When we go to events now, we're seeing on average 5 signups per event where we bring them. So we're really excited about it. You probably all received emails as well from people on our team. So if any of you aren't signed up, you're welcome to fill out that form here before you leave and leave it with me to sign up your accounts up for Deep Green.
I just want to remind everybody, El Cerrito is the only council that's still 100% Deep Green.
Next slide. So I pretty much have all fun stuff to talk to you guys about. You might have heard about our Deep Green Selfie social media campaign that we had running in October. We invited people to take selfies with their Deep Green stickers. These were for residential customers, and we also invited our Deep Green commercial customers to promote this campaign, put the stickers up in their businesses, and tell their customers about the campaign. So it ran for the entire month of October, and we had 40 submissions from residents, and we had 10 businesses directly support the program as well, which is really exciting. And this is a sampling of the selfies that we received. Next slide. And these were our contest winners. They were randomly selected, which was really fun to get all of these photos over the last month. This is Howard and Carol Schwartz. They are San Anselmo residents, and they took a picture with their Deep Green Cling in Switzerland, which is really cool. They got to choose their prize. The prize was to choose any Deep Green commercial customer and get a gift certificate. So they received a gift certificate to the Good Earth grocery store in Fairfax. And then the business winner was Marin Power Yoga in San Rafael. And you can barely see their little Deep Green Cling in the window by her foot. And the business won a Google Nest, which was pretty great, a Google Nest thermostat. Becky's excited about it. So we're hoping they're excited about it as well. It learns basically the trends and your favorite settings for your thermostat, and it turns it off when people aren't there so that it saves energy on their bills. Next slide. The other thing that I see some of you are still looking at is our first quarterly newsletter. This is the resource. We're really excited about it. You all should have received copies of this at your city and town offices so that you can distribute them to members of the public. Like I said, this is the first of our quarterly newsletters, so we will be releasing another one early next year for winter. And really it's meant to keep people informed about national, state, and local issues and stories that impact our member communities and also our customers. If you guys have any feedback about the content in that, I'd love to hear it. You're welcome to send me an email if you have ideas for stories in future newsletters. We'd love to know about that as well. So with the Halloween theme, we had an Understanding Your Energy Bill workshop in the city of Benicia. It was a really fun workshop. We invited people to come to basically understand how to read their energy bill, what all the different charges mean, and also learn good tips on saving energy to help save on their bill. So it was a really fun workshop. It was the first of its kind that we've held, and we're looking at holding others like this in our service area.
Can you do that in bilingual?
Yes, we can. And
Did I hear French? Definitely in Spanish. Yes, we can definitely do that. We actually, usually when we have these workshops, we do invite an interpreter to come with us. And Alexandra here, who you may have met before, who, no? Oh, well, allow me to introduce Alexandra. She is the newest member of the public affairs team. She's our community power organizer, and she's fluent in Spanish, and she does some of our translations and also comes to events. She's leading our Latino outreach.
Jamie,
Yes.
what was the turnout in Benicia? I'm just curious how it was.
It wasn't a huge turnout. We want to do more outreach the next time we have one of these, but there were about 12 people who came. It was fairly decent for something about reading your energy bills. Okay, next slide. So another workshop that we recently held was for the solar industry. So this was a workshop that we hosted here at our offices, and we invited representatives from solar companies from all over the Bay Area, really, to come learn about our net energy metering program and feed-in tariff. We had 16 participants come from 9 different solar companies, and 86% of them said that they would alter their messaging after basically explaining how customers can benefit from marine clean energy if they put solar on their roofs. The reason we have this workshop is because we still hear feedback from the solar community and from people who are putting solar on their roofs that they're getting some misinformation or some confusion about how our net energy metering program compares to PG&E. So this was really, the reason we had this was to make sure that we could get the correct information across, make sure that people knew about the benefits of our program, about our solar rebates, and also to build relationships with the solar installers.
Was that picture taken at the workshop?
That picture was actually of a Grid Alternatives event in the city of Richmond that we sponsored.
Oh, maybe that was really a fun workshop.
Yeah, no, this workshop was
Everybody up on the road, yeah.
What was their reaction to the new time of day rates that are being proposed?
Yeah, that was one of the other things that we also talked about was the NEM 2.0, and there are a lot of questions, there are some concerns about the impact on solar customers. A lot of the rate schedules are being eliminated, and there's a lot of question as to exactly what it's going to look like, and some uncertainty. So it was really just discussion, some concern from the solar community, but not directed towards us, since it's not in our ballpark for making those decisions. The other workshop that we held in the last couple of months was the advocacy training. And that was a great workshop. You guys heard from the Main Street moms at our last meeting, but we had about 25 participants, and we're really excited about having that be an annual event going forward. We created a new webpage on our website just for the advocates, and they're continuing to do amazing work for us. Next slide. Obviously, this is also not a stock photo. This is our upcoming meetings and events. Kate, you do not have to attend these, but it was a lovely photo, so I plugged it in.
Yeah.
Today there were a couple of events that we participated in that aren't listed here. Dawn participated in the Policymakers Summit in Napa today, and yes, I also participated in the CSAC meeting, the Bay Area Regional Energy Meeting in San Jose. CSAC, I think you probably all know, but maybe the viewers, it's the California State Association of Counties. So I've listed here the upcoming meetings in case you're interested in attending any of these or learning more about them. And the one that I've highlighted that is really exciting is the United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change Conference that is going to be held in Paris in just a couple of weeks, not even a couple of weeks. And Dawn will be presenting at that, which is really amazing that we're going to be sharing the story of marine clean energy and the other CCAs in California in an international setting. So we'll be sending out updates and media and news about that, so keep an eye out. That's it.
Yes.
In this publication here, this list of U.S. rankings for green power use, EPA. So we've got a lot of our cities on here, but there's a lot of them that aren't on here, and I wonder
Some of them aren't on here because we have to apply for this on behalf of our member communities on an annual basis. And because of the timeline, some of the communities weren't eligible. So Richmond should be on this top 20 list, we're hoping, for the next year.
Next year.
Okay.
There's just a bit of a delay because of the way we track procurement. Any other questions? Thank you very much.
Thank you, Jamie. All right, and then our regulatory and legislative updates are just information in our packet. Any other board and staff member matters? And thank you, everyone, for the good discussion tonight on various topics. Dawn, did you?
One staff matters item. So I just wanted to introduce, and Jamie got a little ahead of me here, but I just want to fully introduce Alexandra McCoskey, who is our community power organizer. And just wanted to connect the dots for all of you, because you may remember that we applied for a grant to the San Francisco Community Foundation to fund a position to do community outreach. And Alexandra was recruited successfully and hired to fill that role and is doing an amazing job. So we're really grateful to have her on the team. Thank you for being here tonight. And the other person I wanted to introduce is David McNeil. David, go ahead and stand up. David is our finance and projects manager. And he was at our last board meeting. I don't know if all of you were able to meet him then. I think he was introduced at the beginning, but I just wanted to officially introduce him in his new role as the finance and project manager. So, welcome.
Okay, great. Any board members? Okay, seeing none, I'm going to adjourn us. Thanks, everybody.